The Petersons, a seemingly ordinary family of 4, had just moved into their new home on Elm Street. The house stood tall and imposing, its dark facade blending into the eerie atmosphere of the neighborhood. The trees that lined the street cast long, twisted shadows, and the air was thick with an unsettling stillness. As the Petersons settled into their new abode, they couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The creaking floorboards whispered secrets of the past, and the walls seemed to absorb the silence in an unnatural way. But they dismissed these feelings as mere jitters from the move. One night, after putting their children, Emily and Daniel, to bed, Mr. Peterson heard a soft, distant murmur echoing through the hallway. He followed the sound to the basement door, which seemed to beckon him with an otherworldly pull. Swallowing his unease, he descended into the dark abyss below. The basement was cold, damp, and filled with an unsettling quiet. Mr. Peterson's breath hung in the air as he explored the dimly lit space. In a far corner, he discovered an old, dusty chest. As he opened it, a cold breeze swept through the room, extinguishing the lone flickering bulb overhead. Suddenly, whispers surrounded him. Indistinct voices murmured in a language he couldn't understand. Shadows danced along the walls, and the temperature plummeted. Mr. Peterson slammed the chest shut, but the whispers persisted, growing louder and more sinister. He raced back upstairs, leaving the basement door ajar. From that night on, the Petersons noticed a shift in the atmosphere. The air in the house felt charged with an ominous energy, and strange occurrences became a nightly routine. Unexplained footsteps echoed in the hallways, and doors slammed shut without warning. Emily claimed she saw shadows moving in the corners of her room, and Daniel spoke of a cold hand brushing against his shoulder in the dead of night. Desperation clawed at the Petersons as they grappled with the unsettling reality of their new home. Mrs. Peterson, a rational woman by nature, decided to investigate the house's history. She discovered that Elm Street was shrouded in darkness, with a series of unsolved mysteries and tragedies haunting its past. The previous owners had abruptly left without explanation, leaving behind an ominous void that seemed to have seeped into the very foundation of the house. Rumors of strange rituals and paranormal activities circulated among the neighbors, who avoided the Petersons with uneasy glances. One evening, as the family gathered in the living room, the lights flickered and the temperature dropped. A presence made itself known, a malevolent force that seemed to feed on their fear. The whispers returned, growing into agonized wails that reverberated through the house. The family huddled together, seeking solace in each other's presence. In the midst of the chaos, a ghastly figure materialized in the center of the room, a shadowy silhouette with hollow eyes. The air thickened with dread as the entity reached out, its fingers icy cold. Terrified, the Petersons fled the house, leaving behind the dark neighborhood and the haunted memories it held. As they stood on the dimly lit street, they watched the house on Elm Street fade into the shadows, its windows glowing with an otherworldly light. In the days that followed, the Petersons tried to leave the horrors of Elm Street behind, but the memories lingered. Nightmares plagued their sleep, and the echoes of the haunting whispers resonated in their minds. The once close-knit family found themselves drifting apart, unable to escape the lingering terrors that had taken root in their souls. Elm Street remained a silent witness to the tragedy that unfolded within its dark embrace, waiting for the next unsuspecting family to move into the house that hid secrets too dark to be forgotten. The Thompsons, a family of 4, were drawn to the quaint charm of Willow Street. The small town seemed like the perfect place to escape the hustle and bustle of the city. As they turned into their new neighborhood, a foreboding darkness seemed to cast a shadow over the houses, but the Thompsons dismissed it as a trick of the fading sunlight. Their new home, an old Victorian house at the end of the street, stood grand and imposing. The air was thick with a tangible quiet as they stepped inside, greeted by the musty scent of aged wood. The real estate agent had assured them it was a steal, but they couldn't shake the feeling that something lingered beneath the surface. As night fell, Willow Street transformed into a labyrinth of shadows. The Thompsons gathered in the living room, unpacking boxes and trying to make the house feel like home. The children, Lily and Jake, claimed their rooms on the second floor, their laughter echoing through the empty halls. But as darkness settled outside, a chill crept through the house. Unseen footsteps echoed in the hallway, and the flickering lights cast eerie shadows on the walls. Mrs. Thompson dismissed it as the settling of an old house, but Mr. Thompson couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The children's bedrooms became the epicenter of the strange occurrences. Lily spoke of a ghostly figure standing at the foot of her bed, its eyes hollow and haunting. Jake complained of whispers that seemed to beckon him into the closet, a voice that grew more insistent with each passing night. One evening, Mrs. Thompson was alone in the kitchen, the only source of light coming from a dim pendant lamp. As she washed dishes, she caught a glimpse of a pale face staring at her through the window, a face that vanished when she looked again. She shivered, chalking it up to exhaustion and an overactive imagination. The next day, Mr. Thompson decided to investigate the strange occurrences. He delved into the history of Willow Street and discovered that their house had a dark past. Decades ago, a family had lived there, and tragedy struck when the children mysteriously disappeared, leaving the parents in a perpetual state of grief. The house had changed hands multiple times since, each family leaving abruptly without explanation. Determined to break the cycle, Mr. Thompson sought the help of a local historian. Together, they uncovered a hidden room in the basement, sealed off behind a brick wall. As they broke through the barrier, a musty gust of air filled their lungs. The room was filled with dusty furniture draped in white sheets, frozen in time. On a dusty old desk, they found a journal belonging to the previous owners. The entries detailed bizarre occurrences, whispers in the night, apparitions in the hallway, and a constant feeling of being watched. The family had resorted to sealing off the room in a desperate attempt to contain the malevolent force that seemed to reside within the house. Determined to end the curse, Mr. Thompson decided to confront the entity. That night, the family gathered in the living room, the air thick with anticipation. Shadows danced on the walls as the temperature dropped, and a spectral figure materialized before them. The entity, a manifestation of the grief and despair that had tainted the house, howled in agony. The room seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy as the family confronted the tormented spirit. With each word of reassurance and empathy, the entity's wails lessened until it finally dissipated into the ether. As dawn broke, the oppressive darkness that had clung to Willow Street lifted. The Thompsons, exhausted but relieved, stood together on the porch, watching the first light of morning illuminate the once ominous neighborhood. The town, no longer haunted by its grim history, could finally embrace the light. The Thompsons left the house on Willow Street, forever changed by the experience. The echoes of the past had been put to rest, and the once dreaded home now stood as a symbol of resilience. Willow Street returned to its quiet, idyllic charm, but the memory of the family who dared to confront the darkness lingered in the whispers of the wind. The Johnsons, a family of 5, were in desperate need of a fresh start. The small town of RAVENSWOOD, nestled in the heart of dense woods, seemed like the perfect escape from the stress of city life. The real estate agent assured them that their new home, a towering mansion on the outskirts of town, was a peaceful sanctuary. As the Johnsons pulled into the driveway, the grandeur of their new abode masked the eerie stillness that hung in the air. Tall trees surrounded the property, casting ominous shadows that seemed to stretch and twist in unnatural ways. The mansion itself, with its ivy-covered walls and looming turrets, exuded an air of forgotten history. The Johnsons, hopeful for a fresh start, began settling into their new home. The children, Sarah, Timmy, and little Emma, eagerly explored the winding corridors and hidden nooks. Mr. Johnson, a skeptic by nature, dismissed the uneasy feeling that settled over him as mere jitters from the move. The first night in RAVENSWOOD brought an unsettling calm. As the family gathered for dinner in the grand dining hall, a chill ran through the air. The flickering candlelight cast eerie shadows on the walls, and distant whispers seemed to linger in the background. Mrs. Johnson tried to dismiss the unease, chalking it up to the unfamiliarity of their surroundings. But as the night deepened, strange occurrences began to unfold. Timmy, the youngest of the children, complained of a childlike voice that whispered to him from the darkness outside his window. Sarah spoke of a shadowy figure that appeared at the foot of her bed, watching her with hollow eyes. Mrs. Johnson heard unsettling laughter echoing through the empty halls when no one else was around. Desperation settled in as the Johnsons grappled with the sinister energy that seemed to permeate their new home. One evening, as the family gathered in the living room, the lights flickered and dimmed. The temperature dropped, and a voice echoed through the room, chilling them to the bone. "Leave this place," it whispered, a guttural sound that seemed to emanate from the very walls. The family, now united in fear, considered abandoning the mansion, but financial constraints and a lack of alternatives kept them bound to Ravenswood. Mr. Johnson, however, decided to delve into the history of their home, hoping to find answers to the growing unrest. As he scoured the town archives, he stumbled upon a forgotten tale. The mansion had once belonged to the Holloway family, who were known for their reclusive nature and rumored involvement in dark rituals. The townsfolk spoke of strange occurrences and mysterious disappearances, all linked to the once grand estate. Determined to unravel the mystery, Mr. Johnson ventured into the mansion's hidden passages. In a dusty, forgotten library, he discovered an old journal belonging to the last of the Holloways. The entry spoke of a malevolent force that had consumed the family, a dark entity that hungered for the souls of the living. As he read, the temperature in the room plummeted, and the air thickened with an oppressive presence. Shadows danced along the walls as the voice from the journal seemed to echo through the very fabric of the mansion. Mr. Johnson, now entwined with the chilling history of Ravenswood, felt the weight of the entity's gaze upon him. With newfound knowledge, Mr. Johnson confronted his family, urging them to leave the mansion before it consumed them. The family, now terrified and united in their decision, packed their belongings in haste. But the entity, angered by their attempt to escape, unleashed its full force. The mansion trembled as unseen forces pushed against the fleeing family. Whispers turned into guttural roars, and the shadows coalesced into a grotesque figure that blocked their path. The Johnsons, guided by sheer desperation, broke through the barrier and fled into the night. As they reached the edge of Ravenswood, the mansion behind them crumbled into darkness, its malevolent force dissipating into the void. The Johnsons, exhausted and traumatized, left the town without looking back. Ravenswood, once cloaked in an unsettling stillness, returned to an eerie calm. The mansion, reduced to ruins, stood as a haunting reminder of the family that dared to defy the darkness. The town, forever marked by the legacy of the Holloways, remained shrouded in the secrets of its past, waiting for the next unsuspecting family to fall prey to the malevolent force that lingered in the shadows.